we'll call the Jenks Planning Commission meeting to order for Thursday, September 9, 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
Jeffrey Byer, Craig Bowman. Here. David Randolph. Here. John Brown. Here. Scott West. Here. Leon Davis. Here. Carol Mitchell.
Here. May I hear a motion to approve item 1A as presented by staff? Which are the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve my. I second it. Craig Bowman. Yes. David Randolph.
Yes.
John Brown.
Same.
Scott West.
Yes.
Leon Davis. Yes. Carol Mitchell.
Yes. Main item on the agenda is JZ 21 PUD 130, request by Robert Bell for approval of a zone change from agricultural to commercial shopping and plan unit development number 130. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is it on?
Off.
Red is on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This item has come before us tonight from Mr. Robert Bell. He is representing the Osgold Development Company, and the Osgold Development team met with staff probably 3-4 months ago, and we kind of went through the preliminary ideas, what they wanted to do, and if that would be allowed. And after that time, I think they had already been talking to Mr. Bell, and they did engage him as a developer or as a consultant, and Mr. Bell finalize some of their thoughts and put it into the PUD document, which is before you tonight. So the request is to rezone from agriculture to commercial shopping with a restrictive overlay in the form of a planned unit development. And that planned unit development is 130. So currently the property is zoned ag, and it has been a single family residence. It's also had some different types of animals on the property, but it is currently for sale, and the Osgold Development team is considering purchasing it, and they have asked for this rezoning. The intended use would be commercial retail with some office and warehousing. The general location is 9330 South Elwood, that is west of Elwood and north of Maine. They have about 2.27 acres in section 23, township 18, range 12. The comprehensive plan states that the city of Jenks is looking for business park, and what they have asked for would be compatible with a business park designation. Previously, since 2015, and I did not have the time, or I should say did not take the time to look up, but prior to 2000 or following 2015, the comprehensive plan that was in place at that time did have it slated for medium commercial development. So any change in zoning from commercial shopping, commercial general would have been allowed or would have been recommended for approval at that time. If you look on page 5 of 54 in your packet, it has the chapter 10 is in our zoning code, which lays out the use districts, and this particularly has to do with commercial districts. So in this chart, I show you if this was zoned local commercial, what would be allowed. If it was commercial shopping, what would be allowed, and what they have put into PUD 130 and what is allowed in commercial general. So there are a couple of significant changes. One, they have not, they've asked to allow for other trades and services, which is use unit 15, as well as warehousing and wholesaling. I had a citizen reach out, multiple citizens have reached out, but one specifically asked if use unit 16, which is gasoline service stations, and use unit 19, hotel, motel, and recreation facilities be struck. I did speak with Mr. Bell, and the client is in agreement that those two use units can be struck from the PUD. It would be highly unlikely we'd see a service station in the middle of that area, but stranger things have happened, as well as a hotel. So in regards to the use unit chapter 10, that is all that I have to say. So when you make your motion will include, if you are approving per comments, your comment would, and you don't have to restate it, but for the record, would include striking use unit 16 and 19. In addition to that, I had asked them personally to strike use unit 1 and to put in there that medical marijuana grow facility is prohibited within the structures. And so they also were agreeable to do that. So before we go any further into it, I wanted to just talk about the actual process. So when the Osgold Development Company came to the city, we look at what does the comprehensive plan say? And so since 2015, it says it's going to be some type of commercial in that area. That's what the city recommends. Then we look at, is it in any particular district? And in this case, it is within the corridor appearance district. And then we look at, does it have utilities? Does it have water, sewer, et cetera? And if so, where are those located? So we go through some very high level development questions and processes, and we talk a little bit, it's very high level, but we talk about access and usually sometimes they bring in a site plan, a developer will, or a consultant, and sometimes they don't. And then once I get a site plan, I will forward it to the entire development team. And that development team includes the city engineer, the assistant city manager, the city manager, the fire chief, because public safety always weighs in on access and lane widths, et cetera. And our building inspector, he's the development coordinator, Tanner Rush. He's also copied in all of these. So everybody takes a look at it at a very high level. We don't have any really in-depth conversations outside of, yeah, this is what the comp plan says. This is what they want to do. It's probably okay. That doesn't mean that a project can ever be built. So I want to make that distinction. And I've said this many, many times in many meetings in many municipalities, because I've worked in other communities. You can get a zoning approved, but that doesn't mean that a project will ever be done, because you may not be able to solve the drainage problem. You may not be able to solve a utility issue. And if you can't do that within your budget and your numbers, many times they walk away. The zoning is still there. The restrictions are still there, and someone else can take a stab at it if they so choose. But you have to meet another whole level of criteria after the zoning is done. So tonight, and Ms. Oakes had contacted me, and many of the citizens who may be in the audience, I'm not sure, ask that the Planning Commission take no action until the drainage issues were resolved. And my response to that is, we as a planning staff and as a planning commission are responsible to decide land use decisions. So when we look at a case, we say, what does the comprehensive plan say? And does it fit within that vision? If it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan or the intent, then there has to be a comprehensive plan hearing as well. But in this case, there is no comprehensive plan hearing because it does line up with the vision of the city. We like to hear from the public when it comes to drainage conversations. A lot of times there's information that you have as a homeowner or as a business owner adjacent to other properties. I take that information, I put it all together, and I give it to the city engineer for review. He shares it with whomever he feels is necessary, and that is handled by the engineering staff, but it is not for consideration in a land use hearing. That makes sense. So tonight, what we are hearing, or what we're asking the Planning Commission, is rezoning this to commercial shopping. Does it make sense? Does it fit within the concepts and the ideas and the goals of the city? And the Planning Commission has, per state statute and per city code, they can approve with conditions, approve with, they have a couple of different things. I think, oh, here we go. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? Whether the PUD harmonizes with the existing and expected development? Is the PUD a unified development treatment? Whether the PUD is consistent with the stated purposes of this chapter. The Planning Commission shall approve with modification, or disapprove the development required under the PUD. So those are the Planning Commission's option. But to not take action could be considered arbitrary and capricious. So I wanted to just make sure that everyone understood that going into the hearing tonight. So I have recommended, I have made a recommendation of approval, but they do not have to take my recommendation. They can, on their own, make a decision to the city, a recommendation to the council outside of my recommendation. So probably clear as mud. If you keep on page 5, if you look at table 2, so this is where I have made an error. Table 2 in the report, in the staff report, says the street frontage has to be for local commercial 150, commercial shopping 150. The PUD has over 200 feet. So basically I'm saying they meet the requirements. The floor area ratio is 0.25 for local commercial, 0.50, and 0 in this case because they've asked to build the maximum amount. And if you were doing commercial general, it would be 0.75. They're not going to cover the entire lot because they have to have parking, etc. Other things. So center line from a budding street. So Elwood is considered a secondary arterial. Local commercial would require a 50-foot setback. Commercial shopping, a 50-foot setback. They are asking for a 35-foot setback from Elwood. And again, they're going to have parking, so the actual buildings are probably going to be much further back than that. But it does depend on their final site plan. So this is the correction I want to make. In my staff report, it says setback from abutting R district boundary. It says local commercial, by right, you're allowed to put a building 10 feet within a residential zone property. You're allowed to, if it's local commercial. Same with commercial shopping. And same with commercial general. So I had 30 feet because that was the on-site detention on the west is a minimum of 30 feet setback from the property line and pushed all the development further east towards Elwood. So that kept a 30-foot buffer on the west side of the development. So what I need to clarify, I did reach out to Mr. Bell this afternoon to make sure that I was correct. So I have been out of the office, and during that time, Mr. Bell was able to meet with the city engineer who has been on site and has looked at the drainage for the Smithco properties and for this property on more than one occasion. And after looking at the drainage studies and after talking to the city engineer has required them to take all drainage towards Elwood. So there will not be a 30-foot detention pond. So that's good because all the drainage has to go east. It's bad because they can now, if they want to, put their building closer to the property line. So I needed to make that clarification. And I did give a handout, so some of you may have been able to pick that up. One of the compromises that the developer was willing to do, if you look at the illustration that Brendan has, I kind of highlighted in red the tallest, you can zoom in on the picture, that'll be great, thanks. So it says setback. So this, I just pulled this off the internet. It's a little fuzzy, but it makes the point. So if they reached the maximum feet of 20, so we'll say at 20 feet or above, they would have to be at 15 feet or taller, they would have to be 20 feet from any property line. So if you go down to the little chart down at the bottom, there we go, perfect. So it says if they built, and we're talking about the actual wall, we're not talking, we're saying a 10-foot structure. So that's from grade to the roof. So a 10-foot structure would only be required to be 10 feet from the property line. An 11-foot structure would be required to be set back 2 additional feet for every 1 foot greater than 10. So this was very hard for me to do this math, but I did it. A 12-foot structure would have to be set back 14 feet from the property line. A 13-foot structure, 16 feet from the property line. A 14-foot structure would have to be 18 feet from the property line. And a 15-foot structure would be required to be 20 feet. So anything 15 feet or above from grade to the roof would have to be set back a maximum of 20 feet. Minimum and maximum. You can't get any closer than 20 feet if you're at 15 feet wall height. So I wanted to make that correction. The consultant did reach out. The applicant and the development group is in agreement with that compromise. And again, I apologize in advance because when I read the report, I misunderstood what was being said. So that is one correction that would be noted. Also, that in recommending approval, it would also allow for the setbacks as described in the handout that staff provided. So if you look on page 6, it talks about a screening fence would be required along the north and west property line adjacent to residential uses. That screening fence would be they would be required to maintain that as well. Lighting would be shielded down and away from any residential. All of the rest, the signage, the parking, the elevations, I wanted to point out is agreed upon at 75% masonry. The outdoor storage is prohibited. So there is one other area, but I'll go through that in just a minute. So I put in here an excerpt that I sent to Ms. Oakes, who's the HOA president of South Lakes Villas. And in that, I explained what I have already explained to you all, that this is a hearing regarding a land use, and that I would recommend action to the Planning Commission in that drainage conversations. We're more than happy to take any comments and to better understand the conditions where you live, but that information will be passed to the city engineer for review and part of his evaluation of the site. So if you look on page 7, it shows the zoning map. The area to the north is part of a PUD and is zoned commercial shopping. The area to the south is commercial general. And then there is a little PUD down there. And then the hard corner is commercial shopping. So that area is surrounded by commercial as far as Elwood is concerned. So staff comments. Platting is required, and there's very specific language that Ms. Oakes has asked to be included, and it is required to be included. And that talks about if, for whatever reason, we're saying in the PUD that they will be taking all the drainage to Elwood, but if for some reason it was not, there still will be required in that PUD deed of dedication language that if they happen to take drainage to South Lakes Villas, they will be basically charged a pro rata fee. And that is what was originally agreed upon in the platting for South Lakes Villas. So also, number 2, add PUD 130 to the front of the PUD document. On page 6, add the following prohibitions, and that is medical marijuana grow facilities. And then I would add use unit 1, which was already there, but also add use unit 16 and 19, which we have agreed on. And number 7, no additional ground signs shall be allowed outside of the development sign. So I should have asked, but I didn't, but I couldn't decide if they were saying they wanted multiple ground signs in addition to the development sign. But in this case, the lot is very narrow and you would only be allowed 1 development sign, and then you can have wall signs. Landscaping adjacent to the residential property lines is required, including a minimum of 1 2-inch caliper approved evergreen every 25 feet. I said approved because the public safety department, the fire chief, is very concerned about the types of trees that we plant close to buildings and other areas. So I didn't realize that some are highly flammable, but they are. So we'll just do what he says. Landscape guidelines shall follow the soon to be adopted UDO. So the Unified Development Ordinance that we will be adopting hopefully in the next month or 2 has a much more robust landscaping process and requirements, and the developer actually expects to have a much more attractive product even than what the UDO would be requiring. Staff acknowledges the site plan may vary between what was submitted and what was built. But the setbacks as presented along with the other standards, including but not limited to landscaping detention, shall not be altered without a major amendment. So I'm going to ask you to strike that statement because it has already been determined that that 30-foot setback on the west is not going, they're not going to have a detention pond, and therefore that statement cannot be followed out. Well, it could be, but it's not. So in lieu of that, it would say see handout and adjust the build lines. And number 8, adjust the engineering comments. And so the engineering comment is that all stormwater will be directed towards Elwood. So those would be the changes. I have 2 changes in my staff comments for the record. Again, you don't have to repeat them. I have them written down if you so choose to go by staff comments. So page 10 of 54 starts the PUD. Excuse me, there's an illustration of what the Osgood development likes and kind of planting a seed of what you might expect in the future. I highlighted a couple of things. Let's see. I think we have covered everything. On their trash enclosure, it will be some type of masonry and it will match the development. On page 14, that final paragraph is one that will need to be rewritten per the engineer, city engineer, and the requirements that they made. And on page 15, you can see where I said include prohibiting medical marijuana grow facilities, striking use unit 1, and now adding 16 and 19. Ground signs, I just had clarification. And page 7 of the PUD, but also page 16 of 54, the drainage would be corrected under 4 drainage and utilities. That's the same statement or very similar statement that was at the end of the other portion. On page 18, I have already seen 2 different site plans. So I expect that they will be probably not what is shown in the book. I think that they have some good ideas that might even be better than what they are showing. Page 20 shows conceptual elevations. I do think they intend to be very similar in the elevations, even though the site plan may be a little bit different, but they're very committed to a good product. Exhibit E on page 22 shows the future land use map. We have Exhibit F. On page 24 of 54, I started, Brandon put together some of the emails that we have received at the city, and I apologize because we have the email and the pictures, but somehow they are not with the email. So it somehow like the dates and things, they got, I don't know, somehow in saving it, it got all mixed up. So I can tell you that some of the photos are from April 30th, 2019, August 16th, 2018, April 21st, 2017. Those are probably some of the first ones. And we had this particular email was from Jennifer Tilson. So I think some of these were probably, they call them 100-year flood events or 1% flood events, which I think is the new term. Then on page 31, Carol Bunny sent an email. On page 32, Emily Wagner, we have an email. Patricia Maroney on page 33. And I think I know for sure, I had already forwarded some of these at a different time to you all. That one is too small. This is Oaks sent some photographs. And again, we'll have your contact information, or we already have it via email, and any questions that the city engineer has or the engineer of record during the time of plating, they will reach out to you if they have any concerns with some of the information that you have provided. let's see. If you look on page 45 of 54, I think this is the one where it talks about it. It's basically talking about the plat and the drainage stuff for South Lakes Villas. And that information has already been shared with Smithco. The Smithco plat has been approved, but it has not been filed, and they will not get it. They won't get signatures until the language is corrected. So that will be taken care of. Pam Conway, I have a letter, an email from Pam on page 49. Page 51 is some of the information we provided early on to Pam, and ends on page 50. So sorry about any confusion I may have caused with the setbacks. Staff still recommends approval of the proposed rezoning from commercial shopping to or from ag to commercial shopping with the restrictive overlay in the form of PUD 130. Do you have any questions? Good board. So sorry.
Good information.
I say, so basically the saying is engineer's comments collected. Those comments would go to the planning committee, would go to the plan review at the time of plating, and then there would be flagged on the during the plat as things that has to be addressed.
Correct.
And if those items are not addressed at the time of planning, the project is
Correct. But any, so yes, basically the engineer would take the information and review it, make sure that the engineer of record also has the same information so that they can take that into account as they review the drainage solutions, and then make sure that there's no adverse impact and that they've met all the criteria and have also reviewed any questions and concerns from the citizens.
so all the comments that you have here is going to that engineer.
Yes, sir. I probably won't give them the aesthetics.
Any other questions?
Can I
Comments?
clarify the comp plan? You mentioned the 2015 plan headed as ag, but not the new plan that was adopted.
Oh,
Was it
I
last
said
year?
it wrong.
Or, anyway, that's just what I want to clarify. So where is it?
If that's what I said, I was
You
wrong.
said medium commercial. 2015.
Okay, so it is orange. It's medium commercial.
Okay. So,
Well, it was already slated for commercial
okay.
development.
Okay.
Sorry if I don't know what I said.
No, that's fine. Maybe it is here, right? But thanks.
Mhm.
And then one other question, we talked about uses 1 and 16 and 19. I mean, we've had this desire for a while to sort of add or remove uses. Even though I'm a lawyer, can we do that legally? I mean, that's not opening ourselves up to a challenge.
Not in a PUD. We could not do that with straight zoning.
Okay,
But in a PUD, it is it's a document that is allowed to be fluid, and in order to get you the best product available. And so we can make those restrictions in a planned unit development.
Okay, thanks. I'll stop talking. I want to hear from
Two quick questions. Use unit 15 of trades and services, can you get an idea what that would look like?
Yes, I was about to pull that up for you. Oh dear, can you pull it up, Brandon? My computer's not working. Thank you. Look how fast he is. It's amazing.
Impressive.
Mhm.
June 15, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so you could have a wholesale bakery, a carpet shop, fence, general merchandising establishment not elsewhere. Yeah, a greenhouse, an ice plant, and there's a huge demand for ice plants. No, just plastic materials, printing and publishing, window cleaning. So these are service establishments. What does that one say? Contracting services? Contract construction services such as carpentry, decorating, electrical, and then personal services such as auctioneer, cabinet maker, drapery service, kennel. But kennels are also required to have an SUP. Somehow it doesn't say that there, but they would have to have an SUP. Or amend the PUD.
Anything else, John?
Yeah, just one other question, and again, going back to the setback from center line of Abutting Street off of Elwood, as a secondary yard. 50 feet for the other classifications, but we're looking at 35.
Mhm.
Was that an exception?
I can hear so.
Yeah, I'm fine with it, but there will be parking most likely in the front, so it's highly unlikely that the actual building will be the close to the street.
That's all.
Anyone else? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward and give us your name and address?
My name is Robert Bell, 1011 West G Street, in Jenks. Hi, Chairman, how are you? I'm good. The committee. Let's clear some of this up right away. Because we've had some discussions on this piece of property and we need to modify the PUD so there's not this confusion about what's allowed, not allowed at that point. We'll just change it. To your question, the contractor equipment or that use that you asked for is basically your contractor's equipment storage yard. But in our PUD, we said no outside storage. We don't want the outside storage. We want it to stay clean at that point. So your plumber, your woodsman, your those kind of things. That's a standard setup in all over the city. The contractors that are hired to service even all the way down to AC guy at that point. So that's really what that is, and that's what that specifies by that use. What I'd like to do is modify the PUD to follow with my discussion with Marseille and remove use unit 1 and use unit 16 and use unit 19 from the PUD and have that restriction that those uses aren't allowed. We're fine with that. Also, and I understand that Marseille, the intent of the use unit 1 is to remove the growing facility. So we're okay with that and recognize that this property is, once you get 100 feet into this property, it's within 1,000 feet of the school. Because the school's on the other side of the levee at that point, and it wouldn't be allowed anyway under state law. So no issue in regard to that. Stormwater was a big issue. This property that whole area is relatively flat. And this property drained towards the west. And when they put the subdivision in, they put in a drain receiver over on the back of the property to the south of us. And the water from this property goes there historically. The engineer in our discussion has asked us to, I don't know if it's asked or told us, either way, to take the water to Elwood. What he's saying is there's a problem with stormwater in the neighborhood. Well, we don't want to be a part of that problem. We don't want to add to that problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this property by grade. It's not a lot because right now it drains to the west. We're going to make it drain to the east. And so all the stormwater from this property is going to go to Elwood and attach in Elwood. Now, the city's got plans to expand Elwood into 4 lanes and possibly 5 lanes in those areas. And they're receiving instruments for that water will all be changed in regards to what the developments all up and down that street do. But we're going to make sure that this flips. What that does for us, in a positive motion, is removes the need for the detention facility in the back. So I need to modify the setback on the west line because I no longer need that area for a detention facility. So also in regards to what Marseille was talking about the landscaping issues, well, the way to get that water to go from the west to the east really is do LID type drainage facilities, which is water gardens and above ground, which will be something that we haven't seen a lot of in Jenks, but it's been promoted everywhere in the United States. I mean, so I think that can be a part of this. So we don't have a large detention facility holding water. Maybe we have pockets of water and let that transfer to Elwood. The bottom line is I need to change in the PUD on the page that I took, the last page of our requirements, of our bulk and air requirements. I talked about the drainage going the historical route towards the west. I need to change that and say will all go to Elwood and make that a part of our side of the PUD. So there'll be no water go to the neighborhood, period. I need to modify the setback from the residential side on where the detention facility was, and also under discussion with Marseille, I offered a solution to make the setback a little bit further on the north side also, and that was that the code currently says under the CS zone that to the head wall on the side, it can be 10-foot setback. If that head wall is at 15, then you have to add 2 feet setback to every 1 feet above 10 feet. And that starts at a 15-foot head wall. So what we're offering is we're going to change that, make it a little bit stricter on us, and we'll change that at 10 feet. And Marseille showed you that diagram. So that pushes the buildings further away from the neighborhood at a faster time frame, depending on the height of that wall. So that's a benefit, and that's a little bit more restrictive on the development at that point. So the application is, I grant you that the application is written to be flexible on layout, and what we required, the only other requirement in the PUD was that the interior could go to 0 lot line. That would allow developments like what you see on North Elm Street, which is where that picture that you're looking at right now comes from. where there's 4 or 5 different office warehouses in the same building, but allows for a 0 watt line development in those buildings, so those buildings can be sold off separately in the future, because nobody knows what the future is going to hold. Right now, they're going to be owned by the app owners, or the future, hopefully the future owners, and their design is to lease it at that point and maintain it. So that option's in there. Whether you have a road down the middle and buildings on both sides, that was the design that was put in there, or you can have a building in the middle and have a road all the way around it. And I've got pictures of that also too. And so, but either way we go, the neighborhood's protected because we've created a distance away from the neighborhood. The building will be further away than 20 feet if we put a road on the outside. But we don't want to restrict ourselves because we still have architects and other things to go through. I think what we're providing the city through the PUD is a maximum protection of that neighborhood because we're taking the water completely away. And I think it improves that whole area because the design of this subdivision or this development will have some unique things related to the stormwater that we'd like to see come into Jenks at that point. And what that water situation is and how it connects to Elwood, we'll let the engineers worry about that.
Great.
So I don't think
You covered everything she covered?
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Any questions for Mr. Bell?
No questions. Or say if he adjusts PUD to talk about the water as described, we need to include the language on the deed of dedication. We strike that as requirement.
I'm still gonna put it in there. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bell.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on behalf of this agenda item? You are welcome to come forward one at a time. Please keep your comments limited and short for the number of people that might be comfortable. We'd like to have your name and address, and we'll listen to your comments.
Hi, I'm Pam Conway at 706 North Redbud Street here in Jenks. And I just want to clarify a couple things as you've been talking, so I can understand completely. And I'm going to go back to the setbacks because on this paper, it says setback from abutting our district boundary line is 30 feet. But I haven't heard anybody talk about 30 feet on a setback. And my property is wide, but it's very narrow. So 10-foot setback from my property there's still a wall, right? It's not 10 feet. That's not very far. But this says 30. So I just wonder, is that correct? I mean, what was this referring to? That the rear setback?
It was, that was my interpretation when I wrote the staff report, but you brought it to my attention. So
Right.
I reached out to Mr. Bell today, and because he's had drainage conversations with the city engineer, they are not going to require a detention pond because all the drainage will be going to Elwood,
Right.
and therefore there will not be a 30-foot setback.
Okay. Well, this just says setback. So the fact that it's still on your paper, I thought, I needed to clarify because it doesn't say rear or side. So I just didn't
Yeah,
know.
that came straight out of, I copied that straight out of the staff report.
Yeah, this is the one you corrected.
Yeah.
But, okay, well, I just, want you all to understand 10 feet is not very far from my yard. And, so I've never heard of a 10-foot setback from residential or commercial. That's very short. That's not very good. That's my opinion. And so there's no pond. How's it gonna make it? Just change the grade of the proproperty? How's it gonna flow up there?
At this time, we don't have the
know that
details.
yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Just wondered how that was carried. Okay, since we don't know exactly what that site plan is gonna look like, will we have an opportunity to see that site plan at some point, you know, so we can see where our home is versus what he is going to propose? Since the site plan doesn't get approved with the zoning, not even a conceptual site plan, I guess.
Basically, the planning commission could make it a requirement to bring back site plan through the ARC process.
Okay.
It wouldn't, basically, there's a few, it's mostly gonna be about what it looks like. It's not gonna deal with
Right.
setbacks.
Well, I mean, he was saying, well, there could be roads going around, it could be a road in the center. I mean, and again, 10-foot setback, and there's a road 10 foot from my deck, basically.
Yeah,
So,
and those details would not change. The only thing that would change, or the only thing that you would see if it comes back is where the road is versus where the road is not, and where the buildings are.
so I guess I just want to say, if they really want to protect the neighborhood, the setbacks from Elmwood, I mean, from residential, need to be at least 30 feet. Thank you.
You really could have left it off. Super uncomfortable right now. So my name is Emily Wagner and I live at 703 North Sycamore Street. I back, the picture's not up anymore, but I back right onto this lot. And I was one of the people that emailed you, just because it's basically my backyard, much like for my house from my fence is not very far. Current grade of the property with my 6-foot tall fence, I can see Elwood Street and the entire house. So I was really concerned about distance. I apologize. I had to bring my 2 kids. They also play in my backyard, jumping on trampoline that's over that fence also. So that was what I was concerned about, was a pond, which is no longer behind my fence. But I just want to make sure I understood, because I wrote it down, that it's 20 feet is what he is agreeing to, minimum setback. That's what I heard.
10 foot would be minimum and a maximum of 20.
Because when you guys were talking, it sounded like you said, and I know I'm not the only one that interpreted it that way based on where I was sitting,
May have said.
that you guys were, that it was going to be changed to 20.
Based on the building height, so if the building from grade to the roof is 10 feet, then it is allowed to be a 10-foot setback. If the building is 11 feet, it would require a 12-foot setback.
Okay, no, I understood that based off the chart, but then I thought he said he was going to agree to
No,
do it at that, but I misunderstood that.
it's the chart that he would agree to.
The chart that he would agree to. Is there any way to, in this meeting, have a decision made on possible minimum higher than the 10 to look at maybe?
The planning
being
commission,
flat out minimum?
they can consider that.
So I mean, I would like, I don't know, to raise that for consideration. I don't even know what to say. So.
No, you're fine. They understand the question.
So it's a concern of mine, that's all. And I now have to leave to take my kids to something, so I'm sorry. Thank you.
Did you sign in?
I did sign in, yes, I did. Thank you guys, sorry.
Okay. My name is Mike Martin. Live at 803 North Redwood Street. My house backs up to the open property next to the offices. And I've lived there since 2005. Been before this committee, maybe not the same people, but Simmons owns that property. And I personally have talked to the city about the drainage. And they've got Simmons to do a little bit of work on it. But I don't know if you can see that. That is within about 3 foot of my patio.
What property does Simmons own?
Sorry?
What property does Simmons own?
All of the CS
The
that's
offices?
north of this property.
And that property, the open
Gotcha.
field next to it. Somebody tried to buy that a couple of years ago, I think, and they voted it down. Anyway, my concern is they didn't fix it right to start with. And drainage running to the south toward this property that is in requested to change zoning on. Yeah, if they're gonna fix their drainage, ours is not gonna go anywhere. We have they put in a drainage system, sewer line, whatever they call it, things. But if you go there, right now, and you can see where water from the houses that behind the fence cannot get to that. So it's a worthless job that they've done. And so if this new development is going to fix drainage, because our property sits probably a good 3 foot below Simmons property. I think they screwed up when they developed that. I think they put too much height on their property and cut us down. So my request is the drainage all the way from 8th Street, all the way down behind our houses, down behind this new property. It's going to be developed. So, I mean, I took pictures of the debris, the grass. There's no way the water can run south from our houses
Okay.
to this drainage. And unfortunately, it's in that west. We live here in 05.
We hear you. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Martin.
Hi, my name's Hannah. My lot is the one right by the G, the one on the corner side. The back of my house faces Elwood. It also faces the property in question. First of all of us in the room from South Villas, unless you're gonna build a park for my kids to play and you're not doing us any favors by developing this. We also understand we can't prevent you from doing it. What we are asking is for consideration about how do we get as painless as possible for us. We're a proud community. We love our neighbors. It's a beautiful development. We take care of our properties. Minus the one time my kids had a raw egg fight in that field, but I won't go there. One thing I'm concerned about is privacy for my home, because again, I sit pretty high. I'm really close to the fence. Privacy to me is not just a fence. That's not what I want to stare at. But I heard you mention evergreens, and I would love some information about if there would be even compensation for some of us on that border to add some privacy screening, beautiful trees, something like that that would be more intense than just, every 25 feet an evergreen. I'm wondering if there would be some consideration for something like that, or maybe even the height of the fence. That's really the biggest concern. I know, again, I can't ask for a pretty building to look at, but I could maybe ask for something thick to not look through. And again, we understand what we're up against. We're just asking for some type of tenderness as we watch our beautiful view disappear. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Sherry Sanders, and I live at 509 North Sycamore Street. And I back directly behind where Smith Co. is just now putting in their new project. I've lived there 13 years, and no matter how hard it's rained or how hard it's flooded, I've never been flooded. Now I'm being flooded because he has brought in so much dirt and changed the elevation. We read his land report, or what is it? The land change permit or whatever. He said he was doing 2.5 acres. I have watched, probably hundreds of truckloads, even 2 truckloads today of stuff coming in. He keeps building up and it keeps pushing water into my yard.
Ma'am.
I'm sorry, but that doesn't relate to the agenda item that we're talking
Okay,
about.
but what I'm worried about is for my friends, that if this property moves up to push the water that way, then they're gonna get even more water. That's all I'm saying is the more we allow these people to bring in more dirt to build these buildings, they're just causing more water to us. And I understand they're trying to make it go towards Elwood, but I don't understand how they can continue to bring more and more dirt, because like I said, I've never had a problem. Now I have major problems. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Eric Maroney. I work at, I live at 2105 West 84th. And the only thing I really wanted to know, first of all, I'm glad that the plan is to put the water back to Elwood. I think that's great. And we were all ready to hear that, so that's really cool. One of the things I was wondering about is there, like the one woman was talking about, is there requirements for what type of fencing that's going to be separating the commercial developments and the neighborhoods? That's like a type fence, a height in the fence. Seems like 6 foot, maybe a little small. Hopefully it's privacy. And the other thing would be lighting. And that is there any kind of restrictions or any kind of things necessary that would say things like you can or cannot have light going on the whole time? I mean, or just wondering about that, because 9, 10 o'clock, if you've got some strong lights going on in that whole area, then it kind of screws up your view. Even their sun. Anyway, those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Beth Oaks, 2112 West Cedar Woods. Well, I'm sure y'all know my name. Can you go back to the picture on the side of the building? One of the things in this building, and could you just kind of go through masonry requirements and things and how they compare to that? That's full masonry, but I didn't think that was what you required.
So the requirement
So
is,
compared to what?
the requirement is 75%. So if it's a 10-foot wall, then 75% of that would be masonry and the other could be a different material.
And it could be warehouse, or it could be a building like that where it houses several businesses, is that correct? Or it could be, or it could be no warehouse, is that right?
Correct. So it probably would depend on the tenant and their needs.
And as far as this height and the setback go, I'm still kind of trying to understand that. The maximum is 20 feet. It looked like the maximum would be 40 feet normally under the regular CS. If I understand that right? Because 2 feet setback each one of the building height exceeding 2 feet.
Normally, there's not a maximum, like there's not a cap. So if you just kept going higher and higher, if they wanted a 72-foot building, which is not allowed. So they want a 35-foot building, then it is 2 feet for every foot over 50.
So they're asking for a 10-foot setback as opposed to a 40-foot setback that would normally.
No, it's more restrictive in that you start at 10 feet instead of 15. So right now, it wouldn't even be triggered until the wall reached a 15-foot height. And the applicant is saying, we will lower that threshold to 10 feet. So if I was going to build something straight zoning.
5-foot building goes in, what's the setback? What is it?
20 feet. I don't know. I can't do the math.
It is saying 20-foot maximum here, 15 feet above.
That's for what is proposed, not what the code would allow.
And code would allow the 35-foot building to be 10 feet back.
No,
What was it?
at 15 feet, when a wall reaches 15 feet, then it has to be set back an additional 2 feet for every foot over 15. So it'd be 40 feet.
35
It'd be a 40-foot setback.
That's what I said. Okay, so 40, so they're asking for a 20-foot setback instead of a 40-foot.
The maximum 20-foot setback. The setback increases sooner.
The 20-foot, again, a 20-foot wall. And the 20-foot setback on a standard CS would hit on a 20-foot wall because it started at 15 instead of 10. And so we're saying 20 foot at a 15-foot wall. So it's a 10-foot greater setback than would be required.
That's not
And you got- you gotta-
already allowed.
You gotta remember the roofs are a flat roof. We're taking a roof with a roof pitch out there that will conform to that area at that point. And then when you talk about height wise, the very top of that roof can't be over 35 feet. So you're not gonna get a wall over 20 feet and have a roof pitch on top of it.
So can you go back to that picture? I think it had a flat roof on it, a flat top. So what is required as far as everything flat on this in here?
Roofing is not,
So it could be flat.
it could be.
What I would say is talking about issues.
Mr. Bell,
Yeah, can I come up front and talk?
it would be better if you waited until she asked her question.
I'll bring it back.
Right now, she's directing them to the planning commission.
So, I would say a 35 feet, I mean, that's like, that could be a 3-story building, could it?
The average height is for a commercial structure, the wall would be 12 feet. So 3 stories before you put the roof would be 36 feet. But for a warehousing type thing, it's usually not like a warehouse is not likely going to have.
Not a toast it, but the warehouse is not guaranteed to go in there. So it could be a 3-story other commercial building with windows looking over, people 10 feet away. But, that's a major concern. Because there's trying to be a warehouse and that's, without windows above the first level. In the second level, I bet there, I think it's too much.
Anything else?
I'm sorry?
Anything else?
Yes. Okay, so based on the discussion with Mr. Bell, presentation, and Mercedes, the PUD and plat will say that all drainage will go to Elwood. No occasions.
It will say if for any reason it is redirected at any time, then there would be a pro rata, whatever the language that the plat currently says. Or South Lake School.
Can we also add with notice to South Lake Schools Association? So we are aware.
I guess we could say it. I mean, you would have to, because they'd have to coordinate with you what that share of the fee would be.
I believe what Sherry and Mike were trying to say is that, I know you said that it's kind of outside the area, but it's to show the trend of development in the area not really being overseen, and drainage, it is impacting the homes there, and that's why we're here to make sure that doesn't happen again. With regard to the plat, also, I'd like to request that a commercial owners association be created for that property so that any and all property owners are a member there. So when we come up, we can deal with one. But instead of I think there's one entity to deal with. There's to try to track down this issue. And can you explain the process of overseeing when permitting is done? How the city oversees that what they're trying to do is actually carried out?
We
Yeah,
already did that.
Yeah.
That was covered at the beginning of the meeting. She went through the whole process of what goes on.
Well, more specifically, when it's actually happening.
I would,
How do you oversee that, what all the paperwork?
I can direct you to the city engineer so that they can have an in-depth conversation with you about that process.
I mean, overall, I'm not opposed to development. I appreciate this board's presentation. And thank you for all of your work on projects. And
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, Mr. Bell, if you would like to address some of these issues. We've already discussed
And kind of open myself up to questions.
without taking
the
any.
commission. But I would say that one of the things that Marseille had said is that it's an appearance review and would have to come back through and be reviewed. Some of the issues that we heard that we can't get to the answer because we don't have a design on it at that point would be covered in that process. And if it's in a past a period of time where the ERC is in non-existence, I actually wrote it into the PUD that whatever the review process is at the time, the development would be subject to that review during the planning process. So that is written in the PUD. And so if just so happens they put in a 25-foot wall and we're concerned about windows, that would be the time to address that when we know exactly what that is. And we're open to that. And I think that's what the PUD is trying to accommodate at that point. So as far as the Simmons property in the water, we don't like it either. We think that Simmons's development dumps on this property.
Mr. Bell,
So
it's not on the agenda.
addressing that the stormwater in that area needs to be fixed, and we're on board with whenever they build over there on that property, we want to review it also. We want to make sure that they drain the old one, so and not come on this track, so.
How about, Ms. Oaks made a comment about the Commercial Owners Association.
I actually don't have a problem with that at all. Hopefully it'll just be the Osbills because they'll own all the property in there. But if they sell that off, then I think it's good that they have that they create that Commercial Owners Association, that they have a point of discussion to deal with what happens with the stormwater as far as the water gardens and those things. So I think that's appropriate and that should be a part of the plan. So.
Right, thank you. Okay, at this point, the floor is closed. Back to the commissioners. Does anyone have any last comments or questions or issues?
Can I ask about setbacks? So, just to back up generally with the PUD, it's a special arrangement to get some special terms. Yeah, in this case, it seems like there's less of a setback and there's this formula, whether it's 10 or 15 or 20 foot or whatever, I mean, isn't that right? So but what is really special here? Yeah, I mean, we're modifying things a little bit, taking out uses 1, 16 and 19, and other than just a business that provides services. That, I mean, just sort of why would we agree to lesser setbacks than with sort of a standard commercial property? Just, I'm not saying that's my position, but just open question.
It is the minimum that is allowed. So he's meeting the minimum setback requirement. It's not less than what's already allowed. So currently, if I owned that property and developed it, I have the right, if I just went straight zoning, I can come in by law and put my building 10 feet from the property line.
If it were just straight commercial. Okay,
So he's saying, we want that option. And then the code says, if I'm going to exceed 15 feet in height, then I have to set it back 2 feet for every foot above 15. And he's saying we'll start that threshold at 10 foot instead of 15.
I see.
I'm sorry if I really.
So, the question about the 30-foot setbacks, then that would never be the case really if it were just straight zoning commercial, like
Correct.
your example. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. We had some questions come up about some sort of visual barrier, whether it's a higher fence or trees, and I was thinking there's a different commercial area kind of by the train tracks off 91st Street, where we had some sort of tree requirement. Would that be feasible here, or, are other properties doing that nearby?
You can certainly, as a planning commission, make recommendations in regards to any of these things that we've talked about or that the public has brought up. If you think that you would like to have some greater restrictions or protections for the neighborhood, you're definitely able to have that conversation.
I'm just thinking back, I'm not getting off track, but it seems like we just need a visual barrier, maybe not really a sound barrier. And I know it can get expensive to build really high fences, so it sort of seems like trees of some sort might be a practical solution.
Right, after a certain height, it becomes an engineering issue. So you actually have to dig footings and other things, and then that's something that I would personally not recommend. But it's your prerogative as the planning commission. If you want to add further protections, you can make those recommendations.
Yeah, and there's some comments about lighting, and I just thought some sort of foliage would sort of handle that. But I mean, kind of just to back up really more generally, I think it's really easy to say that this obviously is commercial, it's in the comprehensive plan, but I do want to be mindful of neighborhoods developed safely. I really appreciate, Mr. Bell, you working to change the drainage with the city engineer and these options. Very thoughtful. I really like that. So I think that's how it needs to happen. So, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
Question, sorry if it came up, we're asking about the trees, items 5 and 6 on the sections. Got reference to the landscaping guidelines, UDO. Are the UDO guidelines going to be more restrictive or less restricted than other 5? So we're looking at 1 tree for every 25.
It was my that would be the minimum, and then and if the UDO is more restrictive, then you would follow what the UDO says.
Anyone else? Not, do I hear a motion for JZ 21 PUD 130? Let's try it. Go ahead, David.
I'll move to approve JZPD 130 and help me kind of make sure I get all this straight. So with staff recommendations, but just to clarify, but not units 1, 16, 19 uses. Setbacks as described in the handout. Not staff recommendation number 7. I had a note about that, I think.
Correct.
Adding that all stormwater will run to Bellwood. That there be a commercial owners association if there's more than one landlord. And to add some sort of trees as a barrier between the areas that abut the neighborhood.
With
Need dedication language.
on the yes, that will be required. I'll put it in here.
Well done. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Craig Bowman? Yes. David Randolph?
Yes.
John Brown? Yes. Scott West?
Yes.
Leon Davis?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes. Okay, any other planning updates or new business or business?
We have the Unified Development Ordinance. The Articles 1 through 7 are available online. If you would like to, if you have not, please do so. My hope is that the Unified Development Ordinance Committee is meeting on the 16th to review Articles 7, 9, 10, and 11. We are still kicking around Article 8. So hopefully they'll get that before the meeting, but it is still my goal to get it adopted in November. So if you haven't read it, it's riveting. If you want to plunge right into it as soon
It's
as
130 pages. It's 100.
I know.
I'm sure I've read.
So the mayor said, you have a lot of great people on the UDO committee. Trust them. Something like
I
that.
make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Oh, it's all-
Aye.
I have a whole tonight. I gotta make this one's